Hi everyone, this video is all about frequency, duration, and latency data collection as part of monitoring student behavioral growth within school settings. So why is data collection an important part of behavior-based service provision? It allows us to make sure we're on the right track with our interventions, to make sure our interventions really are increasing desired behaviors and decreasing problem behaviors. It can give us a baseline rate of performance. We didn't know where our students starting to know, are they making progress towards where we want them to go? Okay, and it can help us with determining whether or not students are acquiring and mastering new skills and goals as part of individualized education programs, IEPs, or behavior plans, and allow us to move on to the next goal to make sure that everything we're doing is appropriate and based on student needs. Okay, so three types of data collection that you'll see: frequency, duration, latency. I'll talk about others in other videos. Okay, so think about frequency as count. You'll hear it referred to as event recording, count, frequency. How many times does the behavior occur? Okay, really good under two circumstances. Number one, we have behaviors that have clear starting and stopping points. Okay, so maybe calling out without permission. Okay, maybe leaving the classroom without permission. Those behaviors have clear starting and stopping points. They can be really lend themselves well to frequency duration, or I'm sorry, frequency data collection. Okay. Other ones is just making sure that it's happening at a rate that is reasonable for individuals to meaningfully and accurately collect data. So in other words, if we have a behavior like calling out, if it's happening maybe 10 to 15 times every hour, maybe the teacher can consistently and accurately collect data. If it's happening 45 to 50 times an hour, almost once every minute, I don't know if teachers can accurately collect data. I don't know if I could. Honestly, teachers do a million other things other than data collection. So in those cases, if there's an unclear starting or stopping point, or if the behavior is happening so frequently that it's really tough to be accurate with our count, we want to look for a different type of data to collect. Okay, but if it's happening at a reasonable rate where teachers can accurately and consistently collect data, and if it's a clear starting and stopping point, frequency can be really helpful. What you'll typically see is frequency converted to rate. So in other words, a student calls out 10 times per class. That's not really, it's tough to really understand what that looks like, but if we convert it to rate, that student calls out 10 times over the course of an hour, so about once every 6 minutes, that helps to put that information in context. So that's frequency. Think, how many times does the behavior occur? Okay, duration, how long does a behavior last? Okay, so using that example of the student leaving the classroom without permission, they leave the classroom, I start a timer, they come back, I stop the timer. That's duration data. How long does a behavior last? It can be really helpful if the issue is not how many times a behavior is happening, but how long it's lasting for. So in other words, maybe the student just leaves the classroom once a class. It might not seem like a problem behavior. Only once a class, that's not that bad, but they're leaving for 45 minutes. Okay, now we have a problem. So duration can be really helpful if it's not how many times the behavior happens, but how long the behavior lasts. Okay, so that's duration data. So again, frequency, how many times does behavior happen? Duration, how long does a behavior last? Okay, latency, it's a little bit different. A lot of people confuse duration and latency. With duration, how long does a behavior last? With latency, we're looking at how long does it take for the behavior to start. Okay, so latency can be really helpful with transitions. Okay, what we're looking at is the time that elapses between a stimulus and a response, or a call to action and that action. So in other words, let's say the fire alarm goes off. Okay, that's that stimulus, that's that call to action. And I say, all right, fire alarm went off, everybody line up. Everybody lines up at the door, but maybe some students are taking their time. Maybe not everyone wants to go outside because it's cold out and it takes a long time to line up at the door. That could be socially significant. That could be a problem because if there really was a fire, we need to get out of the classroom quickly. Okay, so that's our latency data. From the stimulus, you could look at me asking all the students to line up at the door. You could look at the fire alarm going off. To the response, everybody is lined up and ready to transition out of the room. Okay, let's say that takes 25 seconds. That's latency data. I might try to decrease that time through practice opportunities to get us out of the classroom a little bit quicker. Other things, maybe students are out at recess and I say, okay, recess is over, time to come back into the school. That's that stimulus, that's that call to action. How long does it take for everybody to line up at the door? That's a response. How much time elapses? That's our latency data. And again, maybe it's taking our students a really long time to line up after recess. I can gradually work to decrease that amount of time through practice opportunities with my students. So that's frequency, duration, latency. Think frequency, how many times does the behavior happen? Duration, how long does the behavior last? And latency, how long does it take for this behavior to get started? Okay, I hope this helps. Please refer to my other videos for other examples of data collection.